One of the unfortunate side effects of all of the screaming conservatives' fake outrage surrounding Colin Kaepernick's noble decision to kneel is that the why, the purpose of the kneeling, is being drowned out in the noise. 6 days ago, on September 6, 2018, we were given a tragic reminder as to just how important Kaepernick's and our cause and the conversation that we're trying to initiate really is. Botham Shem Jean, a 26-year-old black man who was beloved by his family, his church, and his community, was tragically killed while peacefully minding his own business in his own apartment. Killed by Amber Guyger of the Dallas Police Department, who was in full uniform, yet just off duty. Well, 3 days later, police successfully procured an arrest warrant for Guyger, charging her with manslaughter in the second degree. And what was notable about the description of the events in the arrest warrant is that it appears to conform directly to Guyger's own statements about the sequence of events as they led up to the shooting death. She claims, and it's reflected on the warrant, that she accidentally parked on the 4th floor of the garage instead of the 3rd floor where she lived. Also on the warrant is her claim that she was able to push open Botham's door with just the force of her electronic key, as it was, according to her, slightly ajar. The warrant also claims that the lights were off and she thought that she had encountered a burglar who refused to obey verbal commands before she fired her weapon, ultimately killing Botham Jean. What's remarkable is that these statements do not take into account any statements from any witnesses aside from the alleged killer herself. Well, look, we've come to learn that there are at least 2 independent witnesses to the incident who claimed that before the killing they heard Guyger pounding on Jean's door, repeatedly saying, "Let me in, let me in." One of the witnesses reported hearing a man's voice saying, "Oh my God, why did you do that?" If true, these would be inconsistent with Guyger's account, would suggest that she entered his apartment knowing that it wasn't hers, and would likely change the explanation for her mental state when she pulled the trigger, killing Botham Shem Jean. In other words, a charge of murder would be more appropriate and more in line with what would be charged if a civilian had forced their way into the apartment of someone that wasn't theirs and gunned down the innocent and unsuspecting occupant in cold blood. At this point, we simply don't have enough information to parse out the truth. It may be that the witnesses, whose identity we don't know yet, may not actually be credible. But why weren't those accounts even referenced in the initial police reports? This seems likely to be another case of officers operating in such a way that diminishes the value of the lives they're sworn to protect, and ultimately grants to themselves a special status that the rest of us certainly don't enjoy. Do they mean to tell us that Officer Armstrong, who made the sworn statement in the warrant, had no opportunity to interview witnesses? That they did not take into account what neighbors reportedly heard, saw, and experienced that night? That there exists no room for doubt regarding Guyger's account, because none of that made it into the arrest warrant or the decision to charge Officer Guyger with only manslaughter. This is police privilege, friends. The blue wall of silence, as it's known, where police officers protect one another from the consequences of their actions. Officers protecting one another from the consequences of crimes is a significant source of American injustice, and it exacerbates the problem of police violence against civilian populations, especially those in the black community. Look, the failure of departments to police their own frustrates the ability of our society to identify officers who present a risk to public safety, and erodes mechanisms to hold those who commit grave injustices to account for their actions. This, simply stated, is not okay. Look, we can fully acknowledge that police officers have a dangerous job to do, which requires exceptional risk on their part. And those who execute their duties faithfully, with the public interest at heart, they are commendable, essential members of our society. But there are simply too many bad apples in the mix, and certainly too few good apples who are willing to hold the bad apples accountable for their crimes. And the tragic tale of Botham Jean, irrespective of the outcome, shows us exactly why.